Okay, I'm going to get us started with our meditation. If you guys would like to join, I'm going to start with the chanting and then do the guidance, and then there'll be the period of quiet, and then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting. And then after that, we'll talk about the 3 poisons. I'll kind of give you guys an abbreviated talk on that so we can finish up right at 3 o'clock or thereabouts today. So if you'd like to join for meditation, make yourself comfortable. We have either the seated, lying, standing, or walking position. I'm going to do breathing mindfulness meditation, but tomorrow I'm going to teach you loving kindness meditation. So if you'd like to join with the chanting, you guys know the sheets are over there, and then afterwards I'll come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakatoro Kavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, welcome back from lunch, everyone. Thank you all for not having an attachment to an hour-and-a-half lunch. I appreciate that. No anger, no discontentedness, right? See, you can independently verify the teachings of the Buddha because you didn't have a craving, a desire, a wanting, and a longing for an hour-and-a-half lunch. You were able to maintain your contentedness. No big deal, right? If there was an hour, it was an hour and a half. If it was 50 minutes, completely comfortable, right? That's how you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth, through observing your own mind. So now we're going to go deeper than the Four Noble Truths. We're going to go into what's called the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. This is where you're going to deepen your understanding of what's really going on in the unenlightened mind. And you're also going to broaden it too and see more widely what's actually causing the mind to experience all the difficulties and struggles that it does in the unenlightened state. And just like always, whenever I'm teaching, you're not interested in believing what I'm sharing with you. As I'm sharing this topic with you, you can learn, you can understand, but then you can start reflecting on, is David really explaining what I experience? Because when I explain this to you, if it's true, you should be able to independently verify it. And where you're having challenges with that, that's where you ask questions, and I'll clarify it for you and help you to understand. Because there's often times when you're learning, you just might not understand a certain thing, and you're going to need to have clarification. So just ask those kinds of questions. So the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires, these are referred to as craving, anger, and ignorance. And just from a high level, what they are is, this is what's referred to as the defilements, or the pollutions. The deepest level of detail that the Buddha teaches about this is called the 10 fetters. And we refer to them as a fetter because during ancient times, they would attach a fetter to your leg if you were a prisoner, and it would keep you confined to a certain area. So nowadays we put prisoners in jail cells, but during those times it was just an open field, and they would put this shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, and now it would keep you trapped in that particular area. So when the Buddha talks about the 10 fetters, these are the 10 things that are keeping you trapped or confined to this unenlightened mind. And it's eradicating these 10 fetters and purifying the mind that produces the enlightened mental state. But when we talk about them from a high level, we talk about them from the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. So the deepest level of detail is called the 10 fetters. But here we refer to these as the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires, also known as the defilements or the taints or the pollutions. This is explaining to you how the unenlightened mind experiences discontentedness over and over and over again in certain struggles and difficulties that you experience. And it also helps you to understand all the unwholesome results that you experience in your life. Because as you're making decisions through the 3 unwholesome roots, it will produce unwholesome karma. And remember, this word karma, it just means the results of your decisions. It's cause and effect. It's not anything mystical or magical. It's not anything to believe in. You can see that when you make a decision, it's going to produce a certain result. And if you make a wise decision, it produces a wholesome result. And if you make an unwise decision, it produces an unwholesome result. So when you're making decisions through the 3 unwholesome roots, and you're going to understand those in a moment, then it's going to produce unwholesome results for you because you're making decisions based on the roots of the unwholesome. So it clearly explains the problem in the unenlightened mind, and it also is going to provide you the antidotes or how to solve it. So I'm going to give you some solutions of how to eliminate these and eradicate them from the mind. But you need to first understand what they are in order to be able to apply the antidotes and transform the actual mind. So the antidotes are oftentimes referred to as the 3 wholesome roots, because when you're making decisions through the 3 wholesome roots, this is where you'll see that you produce wholesome results or wholesome karma. So let me help you guys to understand this from a high level. And I'm just going to go into this to a certain level of detail because of time. Oftentimes I spend a full hour talking about all of these, but I'm just going to kind of do it in about 30 minutes or so that way we're not here because I would like to be sensitive to your time that maybe you're only planning to be here until 3 o'clock. So this way we can end around 3:05, 3:10, 3 o'clock, something like that. So from a high level, what these 3 poisons or these 3 unwholesome roots is it's craving, anger, and ignorance. Some people refer to it as greed, hatred, and delusion. And you'll even hear people refer to it as desire, ill will, and confusion. This is the 3 things that are plaguing the mind from a high level. What craving is what we were talking about with the Four Noble Truths. The longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, the unquenchable thirst, where the mind just thinks that this external thing is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. And if I can just get my hands on that thing, everything will be perfect. It's like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind just chases and chases and chases and chases. It's like an unquenchable thirst. This is like your selfish desires. The mind has a certain selfishness that it wants things to be satisfying, permanently satisfying. The mind wants things to be permanently comfortable. So the mind chases and chases and chases. And this is called craving, desire, attachment. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But those are conditional feelings, and you can only experience them if you get what you want. And then if you don't get what you want, you get the painful feelings like the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and all the others. So in the unenlightened state with craving, desire, attachment, the amount of time that you can be happy becomes less and less and less and less. This is why people sometimes when they get old, they're very grumpy and very irritable because they have all these wants in their mind, all these expectations. And if things don't happen just the way that they want it to happen, they're going to be angry and frustrated and irritated. So this temporary conditional happiness is dissatisfying because it's ultimately going to end in these painful feelings. So when you're willing to let go of the temporary happiness, you can get to the permanent happiness where the mind is just always happy. But as long as these cravings are in there, you're not going to be able to do that. Then there's this anger or this hatred or ill will. This is the bitterness and the hostility that when the mind has a craving, and it gets what it wants. It gets pleasant feelings. But when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings. And that's where the mind, with a lack of wisdom, will falsely attribute these painful feelings to something external. And this is where you'll become unskillful through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is where the harsh speech comes from, the bitterness and the hostility. There's also aversion there, because when you feel those painful feelings, you don't like those painful feelings. And with a lack of wisdom, the mind will try to push this person away, or you'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, being unskillful with your intentions, speech, and actions, or you'll put your expectations on people and try to control people to do things a certain way. That's what the unenlightened mind does. And this is all coming from that anger arising, but it's all originating with the craving. It's because of the craving that the anger is arising. If it wasn't for craving, there wouldn't be the anger. And then where the craving and anger is coming from is from the ignorance, the unknowing of true reality. This word ignorance is what people are translating it into. A Buddha wouldn't have referred to people as ignorant or stupid or foolish or something like this, because a Buddha doesn't talk in derogatory, demeaning ways to people. So people are translating this as ignorance, but today that's kind of more of a derogatory word. So I tend to use the phrase unknowing of true reality, or misunderstanding or confusion. This is where the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It has a lack of wisdom. And it's because of the ignorance, or it's because of this unknowing of true reality, that craving and anger continues to exist in the mind. If it wasn't for the unknowing of true reality, the craving would already be extinguished and there wouldn't be any anger. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of ignorance that craving and anger continues to exist. So for example, before you learned the Four Noble Truths, you might have firmly believed that other people are causing you to be angry. But if you've independently verified that teaching, you know that that's not true. So you've eliminated some of your ignorance there. But the way that you ultimately eliminate ignorance is by arising wisdom, which I'm going to teach you about here in a moment. So this is kind of from a high level of what the three poisons are, the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. We refer to them as a fire as well, right? So now I'm not going to go into, sometimes I go into a lot more detail about craving and anger and ignorance, but I think you guys are understanding it. So I'm just going to focus on the solution so we can shorten this up a little bit. Is the solution for craving, desire, attachment is breathing mindfulness meditation. This is specifically targeting craving, desire, attachment, and the practice of generosity. Because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind can't let go. It doesn't want to let go. You walk outside, you see something that you disagree with. Maybe a parent slaps their child across the face and you see that and you just can't let it go. You just get so agitated, so annoyed. Or you see something on the news and you just can't let it go. Oh, you're just so angry. Your mind just won't let it go. Or you have that boyfriend or girlfriend that does something and now you guys break up and you just can't let it go. The mind's just holding on and holding on. So this breathing mindfulness meditation, when we're focused on the breath and your mind's moving off the breath and you're bringing it back to the breath, the goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes people think that's the case, but you're not trying to eliminate your thoughts. Even when you're enlightened, you're going to have thoughts during meditation. What you're doing is you're arising mindfulness or awareness of mind. So you're aware when there is a thought. You're developing your concentration by focusing on the breath as a single object. And you're training your mind to let go, let go, let go. So if 10, 15, 20 times during your meditation, you have to let go, this is really good for your mind because you're having to let go, let go. Let go. You were aware that the mind moved, and now you had to let it go and come back. Let it go, come back. Let it go, come back. This is what you're doing. Even when you're enlightened, you're going to have thoughts during meditation, but there's going to be these long gaps of peacefulness and stillness in the mind where the mind is quieted or still. Right now, you might be bombarded with thoughts, like lots and lots and lots and lots of thoughts, or you might indulge in a thought and follow it for a period of time. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm meditating. That's right. Let me bring my mind back to the breath, right? So you have to let go. And each time you let go, this is helping your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Because when you're out and about in the world and you feel the anger coming up and you notice that bodily sensation, you're going to need to let it go. And that's what the breathing mindfulness meditation is doing for you. You're consistently training the mind to let go, let go, let go, and develop that wholesome quality of mindfulness and concentration. Generosity is doing exactly the same thing. Generosity is training your mind to let go. That when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, the mind tends to be selfish. It tends to hold on to things. Mine, 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 mine. My money, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband, my wife, my computer, my phone, my clothes, my jewelry, mine, 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 mine. It doesn't want to share. So when you practice pure generosity, you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources, without any expectation of anything in return. You need to make sure there's no expectation of anything in return. Because if you're holding the door, letting somebody go in, this is generosity. You're practicing generosity. You're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required. But if you're standing there expecting them to say thank you, and they don't say thank you, you'll be irritated. You'll be frustrated, right? So you can't even expect a thank you, because is everybody who walks through the door going to say thank you? No. Why? Because of impermanence, right? It's not possible for everyone to say thank you because of impermanence. Now, you might choose to say thank you when you walk through the door if somebody holds it for you, but not everybody does, right? Because some people's minds are thinking about, what am I going to do when I get in the store? I need to get that, I need to get that, I need to get that, I need to get that. And they're not even paying attention to what's going on, right? Or they just might not have been taught to say thank you, or they might have just forgot, right? You don't know. So if you're holding the door or you're practicing any other kind of generosity, you would like to do it without any expectation of anything in return, even a thank you. You're just doing it because it's enhancing the quality of your mind, that it's training your mind to let go. Because with generosity, you're giving and sharing. You're living open-handedly, and this will train your mind to let go. So if you notice that you're holding on to your clothes, and when you see a little rip or tear when it comes out of the washing machine, and you're like, oh man, you should practice generosity with your clothes. Give away some of your clothes. Let them go. Or if you're noticing you're holding on to your jewelry, train your mind, let go of your jewelry. If you're noticing you're holding on to your money and you're just holding on to it, when your bank account balance is here, you're happy. When it's here, you're sad. Start sharing a little bit. And just like with meditation, where frequency is more important than duration, the frequency of your generosity is more important than the amount, right? So if it was a matter of spending maybe 10 hours a year, like once a year, you spend 10 hours donating your time to an orphanage, or you could do like 1 hour every week, that would actually be better because you're having to let go more frequently. Or if it's a matter of sharing maybe $500 with a women's domestic abuse shelter once a year, or giving them $1 a day or $5 a week or something like this, that's actually better because your mind's having to let go more frequently. So you'd like your generosity to be frequently and often. That's going to help your mind to let go. So it's not about the amount, right? You could put 10 baht, 20 baht, 30 baht, 40 baht as you go around in different places in Thailand and you see donation boxes. This trains your mind to let go, let go, let go. So breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity is training your mind to let go. Right? And with the breathing mindfulness meditation, in the meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that comes up. Anything that comes up during meditation, even if it's a wholesome thought. In meditation, you're letting it go, letting it go, letting it go. But in daily life, it's only the unwholesome thoughts that you're cutting off and letting go. So you're training in meditation one way, and you're doing something slightly different in daily life. This is just like a professional athlete. If you were a professional pole vaulter, you would go in the gym and you would probably do weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training, and that would look very different than what you did as a sport, as pole vaulting, because you're training, right? So you got to train so that then you can do something with the body that's the pole vaulting. So the same thing is you're doing something with the mind to get it better and better at letting go. But then in daily life, you're just letting go of the unwholesome thoughts. So if you have this thought that you want to punch your boss in the face, cut that off, let it go, right? It's only going to produce unwholesome results. But if you have the thought of like, hey, let me call my mom and invite her out to lunch. I'd like to take her to lunch. Hey, that's generosity. Go forward with that. Support that, encourage it. Don't allow it to fade, right? Apply right effort. So it's only the unwholesome thoughts you're cutting off. If you have that craving to go have sex outside of your relationship, cut that off. If you're having a craving to steal something from somebody, you cut that off, right? If you feel the anger coming up, you cut that off in daily life. In meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything. Even the thought about taking mom to lunch comes up in meditation, you cut that off because you're just training your mind to let go. But in daily life, when the wholesome thoughts are coming up, you might think about it and reflect on it like, I think I might take my mom out to lunch, but probably not today. Maybe next week. I'm a little bit busy today. Maybe I'll do that next week, right? You can reflect on these things. You don't need to cut off the wholesome things. So this is what's going to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. This is what's targeting it. You're still going to need to practice the whole Eightfold Path. You wouldn't be able to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments by only doing breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, but this is what's targeting it. And it's generalized training that you're proactively working to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. But you're going to need the whole Eightfold Path to fully transform the mind. And then there's something I'm going to teach you tomorrow that is going to actually help you go in and almost surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments. But this is what's kind of generally training the mind, is breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity. Then with the anger, that hatred, that ill will, that's what's arising when you don't get what you want. When there's craving in the mind, you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings, happy, excited, yay, I got that thing, right? But then eventually that fades away. Or if you don't get that thing, then the mind's anger and bitterness and hostility arises. And this is where the mind's being unskillful. And now you're damaging your relationships, and you're interested in promoting harmonious relationships, right? So the way that you get rid of your anger, your hostility, and your bitterness is you need to rewire your mind. And loving kindness meditation is what's going to do this. And that's why I'm going to teach it to you tomorrow morning. And then we're going to be doing that meditation throughout the course. We're going to be doing loving kindness each morning, right? So loving kindness meditation is different than what we're doing so far. So far, this is breathing mindfulness meditation. But tomorrow, you're going to learn how to essentially rewire the mind with loving kindness meditation, where you're doing these affirmations, where you're transforming your mind away from the bitterness and the harshness and the hostility. And now, with having done that loving kindness meditation multiple times throughout your weeks and months and years, your mind will gradually transform. And then you add to that going out into the world and being more loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And the Buddha teaches you how to do that in the Eightfold Path. That's why right intention is the intention of non-ill will. That's the intention of goodwill and the intention of harmlessness. And if you remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, one of those factors is spoken with a mind of loving kindness. But how could you speak with a mind of loving kindness if you didn't have a technique in order to cultivate the loving kindness? So the Buddha is giving you a tool or a technique to be able to cultivate the loving kindness, which is the loving kindness meditation. But then you need to go out in the world and practice through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, being loving and kind. So the meditation is kind of like filling up your gas tank, and then you go out into the world and you be loving and kind. And this is where you'll see your relationships transform, completely transform. Because oftentimes in our relationships, when there's bitterness and hostility, you might really want other people to change. And you're just wanting others to change. And then nothing really improves because the mind's just wanting others to change. But when you start working on your mind and you create the transformation in your mind and you become more loving and kind, this is where your relationships transform. All through my life, up into my adulthood even, I had all this resentment towards my mom because I had certain cravings and expectations of things that I wanted her to do as I was growing up, and she didn't do those things. So I was angry and bitter and hostile and harsh with her. It was only a matter of time before fireworks erupted when we came together. And I kept wanting her to change, and it never worked. So when I started learning this and I started doing this, then I changed my mind, and then it transformed our relationship. Where in the past, where mom would be bitter and harsh and hostile towards me, I would be bitter, harsh, and hostile right back. And it was just the fireworks, right? She would pick up the rubber ball of anger, she would throw it around the room, and I'd pick it up and I'd throw it around the room, and she'd pick it up and throw it around the room, and I'd pick it up and throw it around the room. And next thing you know, we got all these rubber balls bouncing around of anger and hatred in the room. But I started doing something different. I transformed my mind. I started training with loving kindness, right? So when I was doing loving kindness meditation and mom would pick up the rubber ball of anger, maybe we were on the phone and she would be angry and bitter and harsh with me, I did something different. Instead of being bitter and harsh back, I would say, Mom, I know in the past I've been bitter and harsh with you, but I'm choosing not to do that anymore. I'm going to get off the phone and let you think about what you just said, and we'll talk another time. I love you, Mom. Bye-bye. And we get off the phone. right? And maybe 3 months would go by, 6 months would go by, I wouldn't call her. And then I'd call her back up. Hi, Mom, how are you? How's it going? Just like it never even happened, right? And then maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 2 months or 3 months, everything would be fine. And then at some point she'd be bitter and harsh and hostile. And I do the same thing again. I say, Mom, I'm going to get off the phone. I'm going to let you think about what you just said. I prioritize our relationship, or I appreciate our relationship more than being bitter and harsh and hostile with you. And I know I've done this in the past, but I was unwise doing that. So I'm going to let you think about what it is you just said, and I'm going to get off the phone, and we'll talk another time. I love you, Mom. And I had to do this several times until eventually there was no more bitterness, no more hostility coming back, because I wasn't being bitter and harsh and hostile. In the past, I was putting out bitterness and hostility, so that's what was coming back to me. But now I was choosing to do something different, and I had the capability of doing that because I had trained my mind. I could be loving and kind and friendly and warm. So that's what you're going to need to do. If you're interested in improving your relationships, you're going to need to improve your own mind. The work starts with this mind, who you are, this mind, right? As you improve that mind, that's when everything else starts to change in your life, because there's this cause and effect, or this action and result. As long as you put out bitterness and hostility, it's going to come back to you. So you're going to need to extinguish it within your own mind, so that then in your relationships around you, you can extinguish it. So I'm going to teach you loving kindness meditation tomorrow morning, and then we'll be doing it throughout the course. And then you've learned, and you're going to need to get better and better at practicing through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, how to be loving and kind. And you're going to mess up in certain situations, particularly with your children, with your life partner, with your parents. You're going to mess up. Right? You're going to have some issues. You're going to have some difficulties. And that's where you just keep training and just keep aiming to do better, and just gradually work on this. The Buddha talks about this. He gives this great analogy. He talks about when you have a digging tool and you're digging with this tool and it has a wooden handle. He talks about how each day you're wearing away the wood on the handle of this tool. And he says, you're not going to know how much wood you wore away from the handle each day. But when this handle is completely exhausted and you need to replace it, you'll know that. You're not going to know how much wood you wore away each day, but when it's completely exhausted, you're going to know that, and it's time to replace it. So the anger is the same way. You're not going to know each day how much you're wearing away, but when it's completely gone, you'll know that. Because when it was 6 months, a year, 2 years, and I wasn't angry and bitter and harsh with my mom anymore, I knew it was extinguished. But each day, I didn't know how much I was wearing away. So I needed to stay confident and dedicated and diligent to the meditation, and continuously training my mind, and just be confident that it was getting worn away little by little each day. And then when it's completely gone, you'll know that it's completely gone. Okay, so this is the anger, the hatred, the ill will, and there's lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, even dislike. If there's certain people that you like and certain people that you dislike, this is coming from your own mind. We don't usually see it that way when we lack wisdom. We think it's the other person that, they're doing that and I don't like the way they do that. And we might start not liking that person, but it's coming from your own mind because of the craving. There are certain cravings that the mind has, and it wants this person to be a certain way. And when they're not that way, you dislike them. But not everybody's going to be that way, because that's the craving for permanence. So if you can only like people who do things your way, you're only ever going to be able to like one person, and that's yourself. And you might actually have trouble with that sometimes. You might have trouble liking yourself sometimes. You might be beating yourself up. So this loving kindness meditation, not only does it help you to have loving kindness for others, it helps you to have loving kindness for yourself too. So if you have like negative self-talk or this inner dialogue where you're beating yourself up, this will help you with that too. It'll help you eliminate that. So you can be more positive and uplifting towards others, but also towards yourself too, because you need to learn how to love yourself. Okay? So this is the anger, hatred, or will, and it'll eliminate all those lesser versions as well. Then the whole reason why all of this stuff is actually happening is because of the ignorance, or sometimes people call it delusion or misunderstanding or confusion. I refer to it as the unknowing of true reality. I think this is a great way to think about it. Essentially what it is a lack of wisdom, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It doesn't realize that it's causing its own discontentedness. The mind just doesn't know because of this lack of wisdom, this unknowing of true reality. We firmly believe that other people are causing us to be angry. We've been in arguments where we've been adamantly advocating that you are doing this and you got to stop doing this because you're making me angry. You're making me frustrated. We've done that countless times, right? But it wasn't those people. It doesn't mean that they were doing something wise. They could have been doing something unwise, right? But you're going to be around unwise people. And if every time you're around an unwise person, you get angry, your mind's not liberated. It's not free, right? But it wasn't them that was causing you to be angry. It was your own mind causing it. But it's just because of the lack of wisdom that the mind doesn't understand that. It has this unknowing of true reality. So the antidote or the solution here is to arise wisdom. That's what's going to allow you to eliminate craving and anger. When you arise wisdom, you're learning, you're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing. And this is what's going to help you get to wisdom. So you're going to need to learn the three universal truths, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the five precepts, the Brahma Viharas, the natural law of Gamma, the seven factors of enlightenment, extensive meditation training, learn how to eliminate the 10 fetters. There's these teachings and others, and it's quite comprehensive. The Buddha has a very comprehensive approach to training the mind, and it can seem like a lot at the beginning, but slowly but surely you can get your arms around this and you can see that you can gradually chip away at this. And as you do, your mind's going to become slowly more peaceful and slowly more joyful. It's going to be a multi-year pursuit. It's not a 1 week thing. It's not a 1 month thing. To get to enlightenment, it's going to take multiple years, but it's one of the best things or the best thing that you could ever do for yourself. That getting to the point where you no longer experience anger or frustration or these other discontent feelings, that's the best thing that you could ever accomplish for yourself. And it's going to be a challenge. There's going to be certain challenges along the way, but those challenges can be fun. So this wisdom that we're talking about, it's not just intellectual learning. There is an intellectual part to it that you need to intellectually understand the teachings. But the ignorance here is that the mind just won't do what it needs to do. So on your way to enlightenment, there's going to be times where you intellectually know what you were supposed to be doing or you should be doing, but your mind just won't do it, right? So the mind might know that it's unwise to drink, and get drunk, but the mind does it because of its ignorance. Or the mind might know that it's unwise to be bitter and harsh and hostile to your family, but the mind just won't do it. It keeps being bitter and harsh and hostile. So the way that ignorance gets fully eradicated is, yes, there needs to be some intellectual learning, but the teachings need to be moved into practice. If there's any kind of discontentedness in the mind, if there's any kind of bitterness and harshness and hostility in the mind, even if you intellectually know the teachings, your mind, it still lacks wisdom because it can't practice the teachings. When you're actually practicing the teachings fully, that's when the ignorance is fully eradicated, when wisdom is fully arisen. So you might get to a certain point in time where you intellectually understand what would be wise to do, but the mind just isn't willing to do it because its cravings and anger is too strong. So the ignorance gets fully eradicated through learning, examining, investigating the teachings, through reflecting on them to independently verify them, but also through practicing them when you actually are practicing the teachings. And this is how people here in Thailand know when somebody's enlightened or not, because they can see through their practice. How do they interact with others? How do they function? How do they speak? How do they interact in the community? You can see when somebody's actually enlightened because they won't get irritated or annoyed or frustrated or agitated. Their mind's going to be focused and concentrated and clear because they fully eradicated this ignorance. Their mind is fully practicing the teachings day by day, each individual moment. So this is a kind of understanding of the three poisons, the three unwholesome roots, just kind of in a nutshell. Like I said, normally I spend a good hour on this, but I think you guys are understanding, but specifically because we just talked about the Four Noble Truths this morning, and there's kind of a bit of that here. But do you guys have any questions here on the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires? And those of you guys online, you guys can ask questions as well. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay. All right. So I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So just to summarize this, the three poisons or three unwholesome roots or three fires, it's craving, anger, and ignorance. That's the way I typically refer to them. People understand them best that way. But because of impermanence, you're going to see other teachers referring to them in other ways. Greed, hatred, and delusion, or desire, ill will, and confusion. So you'll know what they're talking about if you understand craving, anger, and ignorance. Then there's the three antidotes or the three wholesome roots, and that's generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. These are the exact opposites, because craving is the selfish desires, wanting things to be permanently satisfying. Me, 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 me. The opposite of that is generosity, sharing with others, giving and sharing, and not wanting anything back. That you just are sharing with others, living open-handedly and being joyful and letting go. Then the opposite of anger, hatred, and ill will is loving kindness, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And the opposite of this ignorance or unknowing of true reality is wisdom. When you get to wisdom, you know the truth, right? When you just believe something, you don't know the truth, because you either convinced yourself to believe it or somebody else convinced you to believe it. And this is where your mind will waver, because you just believe something. So like if you grew up with the idea of Santa Claus in your home country or in your culture, you believed in Santa Claus for a period of time. And then you found out that Santa Claus isn't true. It's not a real story. And somebody told you like, hey, this isn't true. And your mind might have been shaken up. I know I was upset when I found out, right? I was like, what? No Santa Claus? Are you serious? Right? I was really upset, right? Because this belief, your mind can be shaken up. But now I know the truth. And it doesn't matter how many Christmas carols I hear, how many big men in red suits with a gray beard that I see, no matter what goes on, I know with 100% certainty there's no such thing as Santa Claus, and nobody can ever convince me otherwise, right? And you're probably the same way, right? That there's no way anyone can ever convince you that Santa Claus exists, because you know the truth. You have wisdom, right? Your mind can't be shaken off of that. Well, when you get to wisdom on all these topics that the Buddha teaches, it's the same way. Your mind is unshakable. It's steady. It's stable. Once you penetrate the Four Noble Truths and you can independently verify that it is craving, desire, attachment that's causing your discontentedness, nobody can ever shake you off of that truth. There is no way that anybody could ever convince me that somebody else is causing you to be angry, because I've seen the truth too much. Right? You know the truth. You've got wisdom. So when you get to wisdom, your mind will be unshakable. It'll be steady. It'll be stable. And you're going to need to do that on each one of these different things. And that's what we mean when we say awakening to enlightenment. Your mind has a certain amount of wisdom that it's unshakable, that you know the truth because you've independently verified the truth. Right? And that's what you're starting to do in this whole process. So it's through eliminating and eradicating the three unwholesome roots and making decisions through the three wholesome roots that you will eliminate 100% of your discontentedness and all the unwholesome karma. Because when you're making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, it's going to produce unwholesome karma or unwholesome results, because the craving is your selfish desires. When you're making decisions through your own self-interest and your own selfish desires, it's going to produce unwholesome results. When you make decisions through anger, you've seen this, where you've been bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, it produces unwholesome results. And where all this is coming from is the ignorance. And when you're making decisions through the unknowing of true reality, this is going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. But when you make decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, it's going to produce wholesome karma or wholesome results. So gradually over time, through the Eightfold Path and all these other teachings, you're gradually bringing down the unwholesome roots, the craving, anger, and ignorance. You're gradually bringing that down, and you're gradually increasing the generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom over time. And now as you're practicing the generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, you're only making wise decisions that's producing wholesome results. But you need to extinguish your unwholesome decisions, your unwise decisions from the past. That's still going to come back to you. It's not possible to snap your fingers and instantly start practicing the teachings of the Buddha. But if it was possible, you're still going to experience unwholesome results, because you've made unwise decisions in the past that you need to have come back to you, and you need to experience that. But now in the present moment, you make wise decisions through the Eightfold Path in practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom to extinguish that and bury that, so that now more and more you can make wise decisions. And this is how you extinguish all your unwise decisions in the past and now make wise decisions. So when mom was being bitter and harsh and hostile to me, that was my karma, because I was bitter and harsh and hostile to her, so it had to come back to me. But I was extinguishing it, where in the past I would be bitter, harsh, and hostile back, which just kept this thing going. I did something different. I extinguished it. I started being generous, I started being loving and kind, and I started using wisdom to extinguish all this hostility and bitterness within my own mind. So now I was able to extinguish that. And then mom was loving and kind. By the time she died in 2017, we had a wonderful relationship. There was no bitterness or hostility for many years. So it takes time to gradually work towards that. So you're extinguishing all these unwholesome things that are coming back to you by arising this wisdom and doing something different. So you can keep doing what you've been doing your whole life and experience the same results, or you can choose to do something new. And this is the something new, is to arise this wisdom. And now with this new wisdom, you'll see improved results in your life. So any questions on the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires? Anything you guys would like to discuss? No? Okay. So what I'll do then is I'll just end by thanking all of you guys here and thanking everyone online who's been joining us as well. I see a lot of people online. Thank you guys for joining us and being interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha, because this is the very best thing you could ever do for yourself, for those close to you, and all of humanity. Because as you're becoming more and more peaceful and more joyful, it's helping you, because your life's going to be more and more fulfilling and more satisfying, having better relationships. It's also helping the people around you, because you're not causing harm. You'll be causing less and less harm to the people around you, and they're not able to experience that harm, because you can't cause other people discontentedness, but you can cause them harm. You can harm their material possessions. You can harm their relationship, their reputation. You can harm them physically, right? But you can't cause them discontentedness. So by you becoming more loving and kind and peaceful, you're going to be causing less and less harm to others. And then because of this, you're helping all of humanity, becoming more and more peaceful and joyful for yourself. You're putting less and less harm out into the world for others to have to deal with. So I always like to say thank you for that. Thank you for choosing to do this work, because it's challenging to do this inner work. So tomorrow, I'm going to start off by teaching you guys loving kindness meditation. That's what we're going to be starting off with. I'll teach you guys all about that. Then we're going to move into a discussion of identifying cravings and cultivating non-craving and analysis of the mind. This will be our talk after we do our meditation. So I'm going to teach you meditation first, then we're going to do it, and then I'll teach you guys this topic. Then after that, in the afternoon, I'm going to teach you guys the Brahma Viharas, or the 4 healthy mental states, showing you guys the symptoms that your mind's going to experience, and then the prescription or the antidote of how to fix it by arising this certain healthy mental state. So enjoy your evening, have a lovely time, and perhaps I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay? Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap.